This is Miles Davis, American jazz trumpeter, band leader, and composer. Now, if you're looking for one of the most revered jazz trumpet players of all time, not to mention one of the most important musicians of the 20th century, you came to the right place. This video will examine the life and music of Miles Davis. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to the life and music of Miles Davis. Miles Dewey Davis III, born May 26, 1926, died September 28, 1991, was an American jazz trumpeter, band leader, and composer. He is among the most influential and acclaimed figures in the history of jazz and 20th century music. Davis adopted a variety of musical directions in a roughly 5-decade career that kept him at the forefront of many of the major stylistic developments in jazz. Born into an upper-middle-class family in Alton, Illinois, and raised in East St. Louis, Davis started on the trumpet in his early teens. He left to study at Juilliard in New York City before dropping out and making his professional debut as a member of saxophonist Charlie Parker's bebop quintet from 1944 to 1948. Shortly after, he recorded the birth of cool sessions for Capitol Records, which were instrumental in the development of cool jazz. In the early 1950s, Davis recorded some of the earliest hard bop music while on Prestige Records, but did so haphazardly due to a heroin addiction. After a widely acclaimed comeback performance at the Newport Jazz Festival, he signed a long-term contract with Columbia Records and recorded the album Roundabout Midnight in 1955. It was his first work with saxophonist John Coltrane and bassist Paul Chalmers, key members of the sextet he led into the early 1960s. During this period, he alternated between orchestral jazz collaborations with arranger Gil Evans, such as the Spanish music-influenced Sketches of Spain in 1960, and band recordings such as Milestones 1958 and Kind of Blue 1959. The latter recordings remain one of the most popular jazz albums of all time, having sold over 5 million copies in the US. Davis made several lineup changes while recording Someday My Prince Will Come in 1961, his 1961 Black Hawk Concerts, and 7 Steps to Heaven 1963, another commercial success that introduced bassist Ron Carter, pianist Herbie Hancock, and drummer Tony Williams. After adding saxophonist Wayne Shorter to the new quintet in 1964, Davis led them on a series of more abstract recordings, often composed by band members, helping pioneer the post-bop genre with albums such as ESP in 1965 and Miles Smiles in 1967, before transitioning into his electric period. During the 1970s, he experimented with rock, funk, African rhythms, emerging electronic music technology, and an ever-changing lineup of musicians, including keyboardist Joe Zawinul, drummer Al Foster, bassist Mike Henderson, and guitarist John McLaughlin. This period beginning with Davis's 1969 studio album In a Silent Way and concluding with a 1975 concert recording, Agartha, was the most controversial in his career, alienating and challenging many in jazz. His million-selling 1970 record, Bitches Brew, helped spark a resurgence in the genre's commercial popularity with jazz fusion as the decade progressed. After a 5-year retirement due to poor health, Davis resumed his career in the 1980s, employing younger musicians and pop sounds on albums such as The Man with the Horn in 1981 and Tutu in 1986. Critics were often unreceptive, but the decade garnered Davis his highest level of commercial recognition. He performed sold-out concerts worldwide while branching out into visual arts, film, and television work before his death in 1991 from the combined efforts of a stroke, pneumonia, and respiratory failure. In 2006, Davis was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which recognized him as one of the key figures in the history of jazz. Rolling Stone described him as the most revered jazz trumpeter of all time, not to mention one of the most important musicians of the 20th century, while Gerald Early called him arguably one of the most influential and innovative musicians of that period. On a personal note, I saw Miles Davis December 1981 in Toronto, Canada at the O'Keefe Centre. Now at that point in my life, I'd been playing trumpet for 3 or 4 years. I was into all things trumpet, all things jazz, and tried to listen to everything I could. I saw him December 1981 at the O'Keefe Centre in Toronto, Canada. It's the largest soft seat theatre in Canada. Now the O'Keefe then changed its name to the Hummingbird Centre, and then in 2007 changed its name to the Sony Centre, and then in 2019 rebranded itself as the Meridian Hall. This was the O'Keefe Centre, huge theatre, December 1981. This was the comeback tour. Miles Davis. Now I knew that he had had some health issues, ulcers and hernia in 1975, got a new hip in 1976, but supposedly 1980 to 1985 was considered his comeback, and he'd been in the studio, so this was December 1981. I'm thinking he's probably had a year or two back. He said he had a bit of a problem kind of reclaiming his embouchure, but what did I expect going into that concert? I don't know, but the hype was huge. Band comes out. They played for probably 3 or 4 minutes before Miles came on stage, but they came out and they went hard. Fusion, just stuff that I had never been exposed to before. And I thought to myself, what was I expecting he was gonna play? All his oldies? Miles comes out about 4 or 5 minutes into it. Band was sounding really good. Miles comes out, standing ovation, huge hype. He plays about 3 or 4 notes, and then it goes back to the band. Now I noticed that he was limping. He was not right. He looked weak, and he was limping around the stage. And I just found out in the last few days that he was in the studio in May 1980, and he was hospitalized with some sort of weird leg infection. And I guess that stayed with him for a while. So I don't know if that was the effects, why he was limping around stage because of this leg infection, or that hip that he got a new hip in 1976. If that was still bothering, I don't know. But he looked weak. He played maximum 5 to 10 notes each song. Each song was 20 to 25 minutes. I think they played 4 songs that night. And my little pea brain, teenage brain, was thinking, what did I expect he was gonna play? He was known for being an innovator, and that band, everybody was a monster on their instrument. They were pushing the envelope harmonically in every way. They were not bound by the rules of music. They did not stay in their lane. They were pushing the envelope. They were innovating. They were unique. That's Miles. I left that concert kind of shaking my head thinking, what did I just see there? And I just really couldn't understand harmonically what they were doing, artistically what they were doing. It kind of blew my mind. I thought, yeah, this is art. Do what you want, push the envelopes, and in hindsight, Miles was known as being an innovator. I should have gone in there thinking I was gonna have my head rocked. I didn't foresee it, but in hindsight, I thought, wow, Miles Davis. He probably played maximum 12 notes on the trumpet each of the 4 or 5 songs. He was back between keys and an organ, doing a little bit, but that band pushed the envelope. I wish I knew who was in that band. I wish I could line up for that band, but that band was unbelievable. And who brought them together? Miles. Miles had various different phases of innovating in different genres and different parts of jazz throughout his 50 years in jazz. So I just want to say, Miles, thank you for rocking my head, blowing my mind, pushing the envelope, being an innovator, one of the greatest jazz or just musical innovators of the 20th century. Miles, you blew my mind. Thank you for waking me up as an artist. Unbelievable experience. I hope you enjoyed this video on Miles Davis. one of the most revered jazz trumpeters of all time and one of the most important musicians of the 20th century. Now, if you've got a band or musician you'd like featured on this channel, pop it in the comments section. I'll make another video. Thanks for dropping by. Rock on.